Welcome to Michael's Record Collection. I'm extremely excited to have with me from the band Spock's Beard and also Pattern Seeking Animals. He's also played with a lot of other artists that we'll get into. Dave Meros is with me. Dave, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good to be here.
Got a couple of releases coming up. One a brand new Pattern Seeking Animals album, Spooky Action at a Distance, comes out October 27th on Inside Out Music. And also very pleased about the reissue on vinyl for the first time of Feel Euphoria, the Spock's Beard album, the first one, of course, without Neal Morse. That one comes out November 24th on Inside Out Music. And I'm told that that is the first in a series.
Yeah, I think it's most of the Nick era albums they're doing that, um, which would be Feel Euphoria, Octane, Spock's Beard, self-titled. Also, part of the deal was a couple live things. But I don't know if they're going to do that with the live recordings, but at least those three studios. It would probably also should it include the 10X, but that was on a different record label, so I don't know if they're going to do a separate deal on that or not, but at least those three.
Well, that would be great for Spock's Beard fans. And I had Neal Morse on the show before, and he does have plans to release the original Spock's Beard lineup albums on vinyl as well when he gets around to it. He's a busy
Oh,
guy.
that's good. I get asked about that all the time. Every time Spock's Beard does something with vinyl, it's always, what about, the
Mhm.
first six? You got to talk to the man. He owns those.
Understood. So I want to start out by I want to take you back in time. I don't know, for some people this is a hard question. For others, it's pretty easy. But what was your first favorite record?
Um, well, I guess I'm old now, so that's not lucky, but I was lucky enough to grow up in the 60s. And so I was there, for the Beatles and the Stones and all those new bands. And my first favorite record was probably Meet the Beatles. I mean, I think I just wore that out. Monkeys, I was really into the Monkeys too.
Nice.
Yeah, looking back, I mean, I was embarrassed about it for a while, but going back and listening to it again, those are great songs. They had so good of songwriting, all the teams they had writing songs for them, and maybe a little bit prophetic. Um, I was a big Star Trek fan when I was a little kid, and I saved up my 3.99 or whatever the albums were back then, and went in and bought Leonard Nimoy album.
Nice. Yeah, not everybody has that. If you still have it, it's probably worth some money.
I still have it. It's really funny. As all those actors that used to put out albums, they were really hilarious.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then what was cool about some of the stuff you were probably listening to as a kid, you did end up getting to play with Iron Butterfly and Eric Burden and the Animals. That had to be something all those years later, getting to play with those bands.
Yeah, it was cool. I remember, those artists from when I was a kid, and then being able to actually play with them. I remember when I first got the Eric Burden gig, we did a couple rehearsals before he came in, and then he came in on like the third rehearsal, and he started singing, and it was like, that's the guy, that's the dude right there.
Yeah. Um, so you're known as a bassist, but my understanding is you started as a kid on the piano and then moved to horns. Is that correct?
Yeah, I started off. I was 9, started taking piano and classical, and I was really into that. But then I got into like junior high and high school, and not much room for piano in those bands, so I wanted to play in the high school band, so I started playing horns, kind of jumped around from horn to horn, and I was playing bass trombone at UC Berkeley when I first went there, and some friends of mine were starting a band, and they needed a bass player, and so they asked me if I wanted to play bass, and that was it. That that hooked me in.
So yeah, you went from playing horns and piano to bass. How long did it take you to pick that instrument up and kind of get a good feel for it?
Well, I had taken in high school. I had taken a couple guitar lessons because my brother was taking guitar lessons and he quit, and the month was paid for. So I took 2 or 3 guitar lessons, and so I learned where the strings were and a couple chords. I didn't like guitar at all. I didn't continue, and but I kind of knew how it was laid out, and I found out when I actually picked up a real bass that I had been a bass player my whole life. I just didn't know it. My store bass parts in my head, and that's kind of a lot of time. That's all I listen to is the bass and drums. Good.
Hmm.
And so when I finally got in this band, I think from that band starting till our first gig was, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks. So I just picked it up, and musical background, a little bit of guitar knowledge, and then a whole bunch of excitement and desire. And it was like really natural for me to start playing bass.
That's it's interesting that like a lot of people can't wait to pick up a guitar, but for you, you found out pretty quickly it wasn't for you.
Yeah, I still, every time I pick it up, it's like, how do people play these? Everything's really small, and it's like, you get it away. There was a guy, I can't remember the name of the guy. He compiled this book maybe 20 years ago about bass players, how they got started. And almost everyone, hardly anyone starts on bass. Everyone else they don't really choose bass. It's like foisted upon them. And then they realize that they love to play it. And there were hundreds of people in this book, and almost every one of them was that. Just wind up with bass because either no one else could do it, or you were a crappy guitar player, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's an important instrument.
It's the best instrument.
So tell me about Spock's Beard and joining that band, because here's one thing, and I thought I knew a lot about Spock's Beard. I've been a big fan for a long time. I didn't realize you weren't the original first bassist in that band. You had replaced John Ballard, but how did that come about?
I'm not completely sure. I know Spock's first started, um, did a couple gigs, and then it was kind of like, okay, we did that, it's done. And then they reformed again, um, for recording. And that was Rio was in the original version. It wasn't even called Spock's Beard. I think it was called One. And then Neal and Al formed a band again, and for some reason John couldn't do it, or maybe they didn't like him, or I don't know what the deal was with that. But um, Al called me and asked me if I wanted to hear this cassette. Neal had just written a bunch of cool songs, and I said, "Yeah, sure, send it." And he sent it to me with no mention of needing a bass player or would I be interested. He just sent me this cassette, and then a few weeks later asked if I'd be interested in maybe checking it out, coming to a rehearsal. And so so I said, yeah, this would be great. I was really hoping at the time for something that would be challenging for me and actually kick my ass, and that was it. That was good. It was just what I was hoping for. So that's how I got in there. They didn't think I would want to do it because I was playing a whole different kinds of music
Hmm.
back then, and I was playing with Eric already and kind of busy with that. And they thought, it's like, oh well, he'll never want to do it. But I jumped on it, and so glad that I did.
Well, yeah, and I think I can speak for a lot of Spock's Beard fans when I say that your bass playing is a large part of what is great about Spock's Beard's music.
Well, thank you, and I owe a lot of that to uh, the song Neal. Neal is a real genius at once we started playing and getting together, he's a real genius at learning each musician's strengths and personalities. And he writes parts. He kind of gets into the mindset of each player. It's like this would be awesome. Al would be perfect right here. This is a total Dave part, and he wrote a lot of those parts. And then I took them, and it's like, how can I make them even more obnoxious. And and it was a real good, like it was a real good vehicle for me, because of the arrangements, especially during the Neal era. The arrangements were fairly sparse, and it gave me room to be completely over the top with the tonality and the aggressiveness and stuff. And you know, yes, it was the same way. I mean, without Steve Howe and the arrangements they had and all the different, there would never have been a Chris Squire, really.
Hmm.
If it was really dense rock layered arrangements, there wouldn't have been room for that, what he did. So I was really lucky with Neal having that vision.
Yeah, there are bands where you're not able to pick out the bass in the mix. I know a lot of Dream Theater fans are not. They always talk about how they can't hear John Mayung in the mix, but that's
Yeah.
obviously not a problem for you. You mentioned Chris Squire. Obviously, there are comparisons to the way you guys play. Did you gravitate toward his style, or were there multiple people that you sort of adopted as models for how you like to play?
Well, yeah, multiple people. As far as just me playing bass, Chris was definitely one of them. I mean, that guy will never be duplicated, you know. Um, but all of them. I mean, John Entwistle, Paul McCartney. There's a huge list. Carol Kay, all the James Jamerson, David Hungate from Toto is a huge. I'm a huge fan of his playing. It's just perfect, solid, sit in the pocket bass playing. There's 100 of them. I could just keep going. But for Spock's Beard, I had kind of randomly bought a Rickenbacker just a few months before that. And it was like, oh man, this is going to be great. And my goal was I wanted to sound just like Chris Squire, but I didn't know how to do it and I couldn't really do it. And so I had to figure out my own way to get kind of that type of sound. Um, I know how to do it now, and I'm glad I didn't know back then. Otherwise, I would have just tried to clone his sound.
Hmm.
But instead, I was forced to get kind of an original thing. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was a huge influence on. I didn't really play with a pick before Spock's Beard very
Hmm.
much. Just every once in a while, I'd pick it up for a special effect. But I had to get the pick technique going for Spock's, and
Hmm.
yeah, it was.
Well, I definitely hear what you're saying, because the thing about your playing on Spock's Beard albums, I could sort of picture what maybe a Chris Squire would play, but your parts are they're just so damn meaty, and you make that thing growl and make all these kinds of noises that are unexpected, and it just thinks I think it just adds so many layers to what the band was able to do.
Yeah, much to other people's chagrin. I remember Al one time he goes, "Dude, you don't even play bass. You play mid range." Like, yep, guilty as charged. Another
Whatever it
another
was, it worked.
we were mixing our second album, and we were in Kevin Gilbert's studio at the time. And what we normally do, and what bass players a lot of the time do, they'll do a two tracks, one just direct, and then they'll do a mic'd amp or out of their pedal board or something for all the high end and the tone and stuff. And they'll use the DI to kind of boost up the low end and give you a nice clean low end, mix the two together. And we were in the studio, and it was in the old days when you didn't have unlimited tracks. And we needed a track for percussion or something. And Kevin was going through and he goes, "What's this?" He goes, "That's the bass DI, in case we need some, mix in low end and stuff." He goes, Listen to the mic track. It sounds fine. We don't need it." And he just erased the bass DI track. So it was just the mic track, and everyone's going, "Is this going to be okay?" And it kind of became a thing after that. It was like the customary erasing of the bass DI track.
So we have Kevin to thank for that, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it was really a learning experience being in there with him. He was very creative.
Oh yeah, Kevin was an incredible musical mind for
Yeah,
sure.
in every aspect too. producing, engineering, mixing, playing, singing. Just he was one of those Renaissance guys with music.
Yeah. Let's flash forward to Spock Spirits Feel Euphoria, because this album, like I said, it's coming out on vinyl, which is very exciting. And this is an album that I think a lot of Spock Spirit fans approached with a little bit of maybe a lot of trepidation. What's this going to be like without Neal? And I didn't hear any advanced tracks for that. So the first thing I heard was Onomatopoeia on track one, and I have to say that might be my favorite Dave Meros bass track of all time. It is a monster rock track.
Wow. Yeah, that album was very experimental. I think everyone in the band knew that we had to step up. I hadn't written any music for a long time before that, and it's like I'm gonna have to start now. I got my little toe in the water with John with Ghosts of Autumn, but everyone had to contribute, and everyone had their own idea of what Spock should now sound like. And so it's really interesting to listen to that album. It's like the different flavors that everyone brought to it. And yeah, that the first 2 or 3 songs on that album hit pretty hard. I hadn't listened to it in years. I just put it on before, you know, this this new deal happened. It was like, wow, I wish the whole album was like that. That was great. But people were shocked by it. A lot of people hated it because we were going into that more hard rock direction.
Yeah, but it was eclectic, like you mentioned. I mean, for the prog fans, you got the whole Sid guy named Sid suite. You've got the Bottom Line. You've got East of Eden, West of Memphis are a little bit different. And then I know you and I'm sorry if I mispronounce his name. I've never heard it said out loud. John Bogelhold, is that how you say it?
Big hold.
Beghold. Okay, John, and you wrote Ghosts of Autumn, which is an incredible ballad. It's my favorite Spock's ballad, and maybe a top 10 Spock song for me. I think it's a fantastic song. That's the one that I gravitated toward. A great song is a great song. It doesn't have to be progressive rock. But there's a couple of ballads on it, and like I said, there's prog on it. There's driving rock songs on it. It's a little bit all over the place. Were you guys? What was the mood going into writing and recording? Were you guys a little? I don't want to say intimidated, but were you a little concerned that whatever you came up with wasn't going to measure up?
I think, yeah, of course, there has to be that because I mean, look what we have to go after. And but I think once we just figured out, okay, we're going to try to do this, because we just like to play with each other so much, and it was such a cool band. Um, it was like everyone in the band really wanted to stay in the band. It's like we might fail, but we have to try. And once we decided to do that, it was like we're just going to try as hard as we can. And I think the motivation was really kind of pure, and everyone was really excited about what we were trying to do, and we weren't so nervous about how it stood up. Once we got started, we just got kind of involved in the process, and it just was really exciting.
And when you guys have pretty much kept John as part of the writing process ever since. Is he what was his involvement before Neal left, or did he have any involvement before Neal left?
Yeah, he knew, Alan Neal and me way before. I mean, going back, I don't know when he met the Morse brothers, but I met John in '85, and he already knew them. And John was always there. I mean, he did whatever whatever he felt needed to be done. Like he has done photos before for us, and he designed a couple websites, and then when Neal left, he stepped into the songwriting thing, and each album increased, with his writing. So he's always been there, kind of as a fifth or a sixth Beatle or something.
Mm-hmm. Were you aware at the time of how similar your arc was as a band to Genesis with the big double album release, and then the lead singer leaves, and then your
Yeah,
drummer steps out from behind the drum kit to take the mic.
yeah, that was kind of trippy when we thought about that. Unfortunately, we didn't have the big hits after that, but that would have been the nice little addition to the story.
Yeah, it would. But I think you had some hits with your fans, and I know that you probably saw negative and positive reviews for Feel Euphoria. What was the overall consensus in the band about the way the album was received?
We were just really happy to be alive still. And we were really almost surprised that the fans accepted what we did, as well as they did. I think that we were kind of given a pass a little bit because it was so different and people were so bummed about Neal that I could have imagined it being completely rejected. But
Mm.
the record company, Inside Out, they just go, nope, you guys are with us still. Don't worry about it. And the fans, supported us a lot, and we were really grateful for that. And we were really excited about what we were doing. We didn't have, when you get into something, any kind of new relationship, everything is, you're looking at everything through rose-colored lenses. And so if there was any, we didn't see anything bad about it. So um, yeah, we were just really fortunate. It was a good timing, I think, too, for prog music and for us to come out with something like that. And kind of everything stayed lined up a little bit, enough for us to squeeze through that door and kind of start again.
Did the recording and the release of that album, did it give you guys a lot of confidence going into the Octane sessions?
Yeah, it gave us a lot of inspiration, definitely. Um, Me, I know it definitely did. I just decided, okay, I got to step up. I got to just get this writing thing going. And I got my little studio together at my house, which I never really had before. And I think all of us were really excited that we were still there and we were going and we were being accepted, and maybe we could do something with this.
Who surprised you during that transition from Neal to Life After Neal? Anybody in the band kind of show you something you didn't realize they had in them?
Um, Kind of all of us for like, hey, we actually can write. I mean, I knew those guys could write. Rio had a couple solo albums before that, and Al had a bunch of recording that he had done in the past. I don't think he ever released an album, but I know I played on some of his stuff that he had recorded in the past. And Nick is always right. He kind of does everything. So I knew that it was there. I didn't know how it would work, or if it would keep going, or if it could be transferred over to a Spock's Beard thing. And it kind of did. Everyone really brought a lot of energy into it. So yeah, I mean, it was another one of those examples of uh, experimentation and hoping it worked, and people really putting a lot into it. And so,
How, if any, how much concern was there toward making the music sound like Neal didn't even leave the band, or was there an attempt to de-Nealify your music after that?
I don't think it was really a conscious, no one ever talked about that. Uh, but I think we knew that it couldn't be the same. There was no reason or no um, desire to try to copy what he did. One, because I think that would have been rejected. It would have been an inferior copy, and everyone had their own idea of how we thought Spock's Beard should maybe go, and so everyone was just flying off in their own directions while trying to keep it within the lane of Spock's Beard and progressive rock.
Yeah. Um. So, do you? I mean, obviously, you co-wrote "Ghosts of Autumn." Do you have a favorite track on "Feel Euphoria"?
I if I had to pick one, I would say Bottom Line. that guitar riff. That was a guy, Stan Ausmus, another guy that usually contributes like one song to each of our albums after Neal left. And his song, I just love the way he writes. And that song kind of has all the elements, and it's stood the test of time too, I think.
Yeah.
That's my favorite one. Also, the first two or three songs, listening, going back and listening now, hearing the impact, how hard we played those songs, how
Mhm.
much heart we put into those. It's those. I still like those too. And then, but I think if I had to choose the one, it would be Bottom Line.
Yeah. Yeah. Onomatopoeia is definitely a surprising first post Neal track. It is a balls to the wall song, and it is, you guys play the crap out of that one. It's a great opening track. And
I just remembered we first came out with that album, and Neal got a promo copy, and I was talking to him, and he just goes, "Wow, you guys like really harder rocking now." And he said it with like a, "Ooh boy, I hope that works out for you guys."
yeah, well, it was, and you and Nick are certainly the bottom end of that song is really drives that thing, pushes it forward. So well done. But again, you guys have Shining Star, ballad, Ghost of Autumn's a ballad, Carry On's a ballad, and then you've got East of Eden, West of Memphis, a very catchy song. And then I don't know what to even make of. And at the time, I didn't even know what to make of the title track. It was so different from anything you guys had done.
Yeah, yeah, that was great. I thought, besides, I kind of wanted it to. I was a real Tool fan at the time, and I wanted Spock's Beard to be like Tool with keyboards, and so I was kind of pushing for that. And Feel Euphoria was like I was thinking, okay, maybe not Tool, maybe this, because it was so like modern sounding and different, and it had like those layered vocals, and it's like, this is a cool vibe. I like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Feel Euphoria. I'm looking forward to adding the vinyl to go with this. Oh, by the way, one of my favorite covers of all the Spock's Beard records. I love this little over here, this rainbow coming out of the gray and adding color to the landscape or whatever you call that. But it was Nick DiVirgilio on lead vocals, drums, acoustic, and electric guitar, percussion, and loops. Alan Morse on electric and acoustic guitars and vocals. Ryo Akimoto on keyboards, and of course yourself, Dave Meros, on bass. And that one comes out on Inside Out Music on 180-gram vinyl, double vinyl. It's a double album on November 24th. In addition to if you have the CD, you're also going to get the two bonus tracks, Moth of Many Flames and From the Messenger. Tell me a little bit about those songs.
Those, I think Moth of Many Flames was an Al song. I don't remember exactly, but I think that's just a demo that Al had, and then Rio did the Messenger. I think he created that because they wanted a couple bonus tracks. Um, I'm not sure if we had reached the point yet. I don't. There was the Japanese release. I'm not sure if this had one, but Japanese releases, they always want a couple extra,
Mm-hmm.
and so Rio is always good at coming up with something for the bonus track,
Yeah.
and just don't worry about it, I'll handle it. And then he just writes something, and he goes, here you go.
Now you're old school like me. It's got to be pretty cool for these to start coming out on vinyl.
Yeah, this is blasphemy, but I'm not a fan of vinyl at
Really?
all. I could not, when CDs came out in whenever that was, late 70s, early 80s, I was so happy. Finally get to stop playing these things, because all the noise, and you have to be careful with them, and to me, it's great. The artwork is great, and just having, I mean, I just got the pattern seeking animals one the other day, and the 180-gram, it's heavy. I
Yeah.
mean, it's noticeably heavier than a normal album. So I like it as like a piece of merchandise, something you can look at and read, and the font isn't like 6 point, it's like old guys like me can actually read it. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm not a fan of the medium in an audio sense.
Okay.
I can argue with the fans of it
Yeah.
for hours and hours, and no one will ever change their mind. It's like politics or religion, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I know where you're coming from. I it was the exact same feeling I had at that time. But of course, nobody explained to me how you're supposed to take care of your records. So it is a little extra work, a little extra labor to keep them sounding nice. But boy, once they don't sound nice anymore, yeah, you can't wait to get rid of it. And of course, in my little town, we had one little shop where they had records, and if it skipped, you took it back, but you had to
Yeah.
wait weeks to get a new one because they didn't have another one on the shelf.
And then some of them would be like manufacturing defects, you know, like a bad master
Hmm.
or something that was mastered beyond the capability of the lathe that cut the master. And, you know, you could get three copies and they'd all skip in the same place.
That's no good. Now, did you transition via the cassette between vinyl and CD, or did you just go straight from vinyl to CD?
Oh, I had cassettes going. Yeah, definitely. And that was another format. It was like, this is how I can play it in the car, and this is how I can play it at the beach or whatever. But that was always, you know, you press the play button and, you know, you get the hiss, and the fidelity was never right. And the cassette player would get a little bit fast or slow. And so it'd be a little off pitch. And, you know, so the CD, when that came out, it just took care of all of those problems.
Mm-hmm.
Problems that why people hate CDs now is as a medium, it's kind of perfect, but people were remastering all these great albums, remastering them for CD and going over the top
Mm-hmm.
with their remastering and stuff, and like kind of ruining the albums. And it's not the CD's fault; it's the mastering engineer's fault.
Yeah.
And so it gave CDs a bad name. But you know, with in the studio, I've done ABs with the engineer, you know, just going, okay, here is what you guys recorded. This is the master. This is the reel to reel tape master. Play that, record directly from the master onto a CD, and it sounds pretty much exactly like the master. And then you put on a vinyl album, and it doesn't sound exactly like the master. So it sounds good. It
Mm-hmm.
has a vibe. It really has a vibe. Vinyl does, but it's not. You know, I mean, look at what it has to do. It's a miracle that it even works. This little needle in this like trench with bumps on it. It's got to be EQ'd to go onto the record, and then backwards EQ'd to come off of the record. It's kind of a miracle that it works as well as it does. But um,
Yeah.
I don't say
It's
anymore.
incredible that anyone ever figured out that that's a way you could listen back to things.
Yeah, yeah. The technology. People were geniuses. I mean, it was all mechanical. You know,
Yeah,
the things people
absolutely.
find humans. Give us enough time and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, now you're going to have at least a few of these out on vinyl, as you mentioned the other Nick albums. Hopefully the 10 album as well. And I like I said, Neal did mention specifically that he has to get it done with the original Spock's Beard album. So we're looking forward to all of those. But we're not done because you are in another band, Pattern Seeking Animals, and you have a new album coming out here in a few weeks. Spooky Action at a Distance, the fourth Pattern Seeking Animals album. And I'm curious as to how I know this was John's sort of an outlet for John's music, but how did this start and end up being two guys you were already playing with and another guy who was already contributing to the albums you were working on?
Oh, how did it come to be?
Mm-hmm.
After, you know, John had a backlog of songs that either he didn't want to present to Spock's Beard or weren't used by Spock's Beard. And he just wanted to record them with, you know, kind of proper recordings with real people instead of him and the computer only. And so, you know, he asked Jimmy and I if we wanted to do it, and we go, absolutely, yeah, send them along. So we did a few songs like that, and it's kind of started sounding like a band. and an album. So he finished writing other songs, and here was kind of an album's worth of stuff, and it sounded like a band. And he had been talking with Thomas from Inside Out, and Thomas said, "Yeah, absolutely, send it." And Thomas liked it, and so we signed Pattern Seeking Animals to a, I think that was a 3 album deal, and all of a sudden it's like, I guess we're a band. Yeah, let's go.
And of course, Ted also in Spock's Beard, and it now. Does John do all the writing of all the songs, or do you guys pitch in with this with the writing?
There have been a couple contributions by Ted and by me, but it's mostly John. And he writes like you would, like a soundtrack writer would write, or an orchestrator or a classical writer. He'll orchestrate all the parts, and there's some latitude in what we can do with those. We can interpret them to a certain degree, but a lot of things, like, if you one part, it's like, oh, I'm feeling something different right here, but I listen to the rest of the tracks, it's like, no, I got to stay with the cello there, or I got to, so a lot of it for all the parts are written out, but we do have some kind of latitude to add. And sometimes he'll just leave a spot blank. It's like, just, I don't know, here, just do something, play, But yeah, it's mainly him.
Now, as a bassist, and maybe not just for as a bassist, but this could apply to drummers or guitarists or keyboard players as well. When someone else is writing the songs and you're putting your stuff down, maybe you don't even know what the lyrics are to this thing yet. How important are the lyrics to you in the final product? Do you even care what the guy's singing about?
Well, I have a particular brain that I thought was defective for the longest time, but I found out that it's an actual thing. And there's a lot of people, when there's drums and music happening, I can't understand lyrics. They can be totally mixed clearly and everything, and I just hear like a sound, it might as well be a saxophone or something. I can hear syllables and stuff, but my brain doesn't really put it together. So I just mainly go on the vibe of the music. And sometimes John he'll send out lyrics like for Ted to sing and stuff, and then I can read them and I go, these are really cool. And but I'm definitely not one of those people that interpret the lyrics as I'm playing, because I don't even know what they are.
Now, the reason I asked that question is because John's a really interesting storyteller with a wide variety of interests. I don't know where he borrows from historical, he borrows from fiction, he makes things up in his mind. And so I was just curious. I'm always curious as to when you're making an album and you get the finished product in your hand, you play it back, and then you find out what they're saying, how that impacts you at the time.
Well, I mean, I just got the Feel Euphoria promo copies. I mean, not Feel, the Spooky Actions promo copies. And the album has a really large lyric sheet in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't even playing the record. I was just reading it. And the lyrics are just superb. And then when that, if I have the lyrics in front of me and listening to the music, it amplifies the whole thing by 10 times. And yeah, so the lyrics to all of the Pattern Seeking Animals, and this one in particular, I mean, it's when you read it, it's like reading poetry. They're really, really good lyrics on this record. And then when I finally got my brain to realize what was going on, reading along while listening, it's like, this is great. It was a lot better with the lyrics.
How do you approach recording an album for Pattern Seeking Animals? How does it start? And do you just do your parts at home in your home studio?
Yeah, the drums are typically in the real studio. Although Jimmy has a really nice setup in his house, but normally the drums are done in the actual dedicated studio, and mixing is done in the studio, and string sections are done in the studio. Most of the other stuff is done at home studios. We've all got, now anyone can have a studio if you have a computer.
Mhm.
And so I I live pretty far away from everyone else. I'm just here in my little cave doing my little things, and sending files. I mean, I never set foot in the studio at all. And it's got its advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantages are I can't get immediate feedback. So a lot of times I'll record like the first 16 bars of the song four different ways, maybe four different sounds, four different basses or whatever, and I'll send them to John. I go, which pick one? I can't decide. And so just go, yeah, I like that one. And so then I'll go in that direction. But what was the question again?
It was just about how you record it. You've answered
Oh,
it. So it makes a lot of sense. That's the way that a lot of bands are doing it these days, especially ones that aren't, um, you know, don't have big record label backing and that kind of thing. So uh, it's about what I expected. But when you worked on this album, let's talk about your equipment. What basses did you play on this record?
I played a lot of weirdos, because that's a lot of what I have are just weird basses, things that I've kind of like bastardized,
Hmm.
Oh, this would be great if I added a thing here or in. And so I played from Iron Butterfly. I had a replica of a Mosrite bass, and it's got really old flat wound strings on it, and it's got a total sound. And I used that, I think, on two songs, a total flat wound with a pick. And then I also have a Fender Precision bass that has really old strings on it. I mean, like 25-year-old strings. That thing just sounds great. And I use that for a song or two. Then I have a couple basses that aren't Rickenbackers, but I've modified those so they sound like a Rick. And I use those. Some basses I'd use, I mean, some songs I'd use two basses, like the intro and verse would be a bass with flat wounds. And then all of a sudden, here's the Rick sound that comes in. So, I mean, that's one of the advantages to recording at home. I can have everything that I own within 10 feet of me, and just keep experimenting. But that's also a downside because I tend to go down rabbit holes with that.
Mm.
Just try too many things. It's like, just pick one.
Now, do you ever get concerned? What do I do if I have to play this live?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And we all kind of faced that when we had gigs booked fine. It's like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? And it's one of the hardest gigs I've ever done. I would maybe say it is the hardest gig to play live that I've ever done. And I mean, there's a lot of times it's fun before a gig. You're excited and you want to go out and show people. And these ones are like, for me at least, just anxiety. There's so much memorization and so many different weird things. And the way everything is written, it doesn't really sound that complex. But when you go to memorize it, it is. And it's the kind of thing where if one guy screws up, it's like knocking the first domino over. And then everyone's kind of screwed up for a while, and you have to like kind of force it back into track. And yeah, so uh, we used, we ran to tracks too, because there's just two like choirs, and weird parts that you can't really replicate.
Hmm.
Those run into tracks. And then the poor keyboard players, Walter, he's playing mandolin and guitar and three different keyboard parts, and Dennis is playing the other six keyboard parts. And those guys put in so much work getting their soundscapes together and learning all the weird little parts and stuff. And Ted, instead of doing his guitar tracks and then vocals, he had to do them both at the same time. There's a million different guitar sounds. And thank God for digital now, because he's got one of those um, Helix deals, and you can program all different kinds of stuff in it. You don't have to bring a refrigerator sized rack of gear.
Yeah.
yeah, getting a live thing together was completely a challenge.
I will say that that's one thing I noticed. You mentioned Ted and this guitar. To me, it seems like Ted has found a very confident level of guitar playing that earlier in his career, he hardly picked one up on stage, but now it seems like he's extremely comfortable with the instrument.
Well, that's what he likes about this band, I think the most, because he's always been that level of guitar player,
Hmm.
but he never had the chance before. He was like the singer, and then it's like, well, we have this other guitar part, and so can you do that? And so he's always been like caged in, always wanting to break out a little bit more, and then this is his chance. In 2010 or 11 or something, we started a cover band because he moved up close to where I was, and he was, the guitar player and the singer, and he's equally talented in both areas. And so, this was a great chance for him to show the world. It's like, look, I can play this thing.
Yeah, it's good that he could do that because there are a lot of people. I mean, you're in a band with Doug Ott, I mean, that's Doug Ott. When you're in a band with Alan Morse, there's Alan Morse. What else do you need? But it's good. It's good. He does a great job throughout this album. He's really got some fantastic solos in this on Spooky Action at a Distance. Now, this band is we talked a little bit about it. Ted Leonard, lead vocals and guitar. Yourself, Dave Meros on bass, Jimmy Keegan on drums, and John Baghold on keyboards and production. And you guys took a little bit of a different approach to your backing vocals on this album. There's some extremely interesting and amazing backing vocals on this, especially a song like um, well, The Man Made of Stone for one, and Clouds That Never Rain. That's another one that I think that the backing vocals really help make the song something even bigger and more interesting.
Yeah, there's a couple songs on the album that were co-written by a friend of and former bandmate of John and me too. I was in the '80s. I was in a band with this woman Diane Boothby, who's an incredible songwriter, singer. It's one of those artists that should have been up there in the Kate Bush, thing, fell through the cracks like so many of us do. And she co-wrote a couple of those songs with John, and so she is the background vocals, does a lot of background vocals on that, and yeah, I think it sounds great. Also,
You have not a lot of epics on this album, but He Once Was is a 12-minute song. Very interesting. Again, a good lyric song, a good story song. I think Ted sings it. It's very simple lyric that returns with about the man, the man he was. I met a man in town today. What he did not say. I mean, very simple, but Ted really sells it, and it's an interesting song. And you guys kind of stretch out in the middle of this song. Is this one of the things that you guys try not to do as much because of your affiliation with Spock's Beard, or do you even think about it at all about the lengths of these songs?
well, it's I know that as we go from album to album, John's gotten more into like pruning things down and not stretching them out for the sake of having a long song. There's actually, it's kind of weird, but there's actually a little bit of pressure to do long songs formats in prog.
Mm-hmm.
People are sometimes impressed when you just before the album comes out and you post the song titles and the lengths, and they're just going, "Ooh, 17 minutes, that's going to be good." And it's kind of funny, but we're kind of bucking that trend a little bit, and getting things down to the nut of the song a little bit more. We always have one that, John would be the guy to really talk to more about that, but I know he's kind of consciously pruned things down a little bit. But if the song kind of says, I feel like going in this direction, he'll definitely go there.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ted's voice is what Ted's voice is, but you as a bassist, you have different choices of what you can do. Do you do anything different for this band to differentiate your playing in Spock's Beard, or do you not worry about that?
Yeah, I try to do Spock's Beard, like I was saying, it gave me the opportunity to be the obnoxious bass player that I always wanted to be. um, because of the arrangements and because of the instrumentation and the writing and different writing and stuff. I don't want to force that into places it won't fit. So I could have made a joke about that right there, but I won't. And um, so I try to get an idea in my head. I've got a lot of hero bass players and a lot of favorite bass tones. And like on this album, I played basses with flat wound strings quite a bit, really, and I really like playing with flat wounds. I mean, I think I'm, you know, turning into a poor man's version of Pino Palladino or something,
Mhm.
being known for one thing and then at some point in your life deciding you want to play a bass with flat wounds. I'm going there. Every time I pick up one of those basses with the flats, it's like, this is so fun and it sounds so good. But yeah, it's mainly about what the song kind of asks for. And when I was younger, I used to develop a sound. It's like, okay, this is my bass. This is the sound I get. It's as good as I can get for what I like. That's what it is. And I've become much more schizophrenic in my older age, collecting all these weird instruments and wanting to use them all. So yeah, my playing is a lot different than it was in Spock's Beard. The tonality, every once in a while, I'll go back to it, but it's similar but different, and sometimes quite a bit different.
Yeah, that's I noticed that. That's why I asked the question about whether you try to play differently because it isn't the same stylistically necessarily. It isn't the same tone necessarily. It isn't that big, thick, meaty, chunky, growling thing that you do on some of those Spock's Beard albums. But it suits the songs perfectly. And a lot of these songs from Pattern Seeking Animals, and on this album in particular, they're they're progressive rock, but they're tight, they're catchy, they would fit in with the musical format on many radio stations. Um, the one of the interesting ones that stuck out to me though was Window to the World because it's got that police vibe, that reggae ska vibe. Is that something that was on the original demo, or did was what was the thought behind going that direction? That's a very different direction for you guys.
That was quite a, the demo goes back, his original demo with Diane and was done in the 80s, maybe 1990, but late 80s probably, I think. And that had the melody and the lyrics and stuff were pretty much intact on this version. The arrangement's really different. And I don't know, John gets inspirations from a lot of different areas, and he'll something will strike him and he'll just go that direction.
Well, the interesting thing about progressive rock, and it happened with that song, is that sometimes when you first listen to a record, you don't know if you like it or not. You have to hear it a couple more times. That was one of those that I didn't really care for the first time I listened to it. But the more I listened to it, the more and more I kind of got it and got into it, and I enjoy it quite a bit now. But at first, I really wasn't sure about that one.
Well, yeah, it is weird the way different people hear different things because I wanted that to be the lead off song.
Oh,
It's like
really?
this one grab everybody. Just let's do that one first. I can't remember what the first one is now.
It's a Man Made of Stone is the
Oh
opening
yeah.
track.
Yeah, so I thought Window to the World was the most catchy one. So, but I'm always wrong, always. When it's like, what order do you think it should be going? It's like, do not ask me because I'll be different than everyone else.
Again, variety is the spice of life. So this is a one thing that I loved about Bulletproof was that you guys inserted the name of the band into the song lyrics, and I don't know if that's where it originally came from, but I always love when bands do that.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what happened because that song was one of the bonus tracks on one of the Spock's albums, and uh, John liked that word. And so when it came time to have his own band and name it, he named the band from the lyric of that song.
Mm, I like it. It's great. So this is available. It's an LP which got two live bonus tracks. It's double CD, has an additional studio track and three live bonus tracks. So you've got a variety of things that you can purchase to get all of the music. And the live bonus tracks are from a festival appearance. Is there a festival appearance in the future of Pattern Seeking Animals for this release?
There's nothing planned at the moment, but you never know. These things kind of come up. Um, we kind of put our name in for a lot of them, and whether they happen or not is up to the promoter.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that one just happened to be a really good festival that had recording capabilities. So that was easy to grab the tracks and mix them and make bonus tracks from it and YouTube songs and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, the great thing too about having you guys all in the same band, and it makes it easier for a festival promoter. You could actually have both bands, Spock's Beard as well, because you've got a good chunk of the band right there.
Yeah, I think if both bands were playing, and my brain would just explode. Too much info, too much data processing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So obviously, Noise Floor was the last Spock's Beard album in 2018. That's 5 years now. What is the current status of that band? And what, I mean, Nick did drums on that, but he's not officially a band member. Is there a plan to do another album? And would Nick do the drums again, or do you even have you even talked that far in advance?
We've talked last year. We talked a little bit. Had some talks that like these summits that all the countries go to. The talks fell apart and on the second day of discussion, and so we had a little bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the plan for Spock's Beard is not to really have a plan. Take things as they come. Evaluate things on a one by one situation, and I mean, we're getting together a little tour for, I think, February of 2024. And so there's, that. And it just, I don't know, things could happen or could not. It's kind of open ended. Never say never.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, there's no specific plan to record another record.
Okay. What was what was it like when you heard that there was going to be a snow concert at MorseFest?
Yeah, that was, I think enough time had passed. The timing was perfect for that. Neal's has a lot of wisdom in those kind of things, He just sent us the idea, and whereas a few years before that, there may have been a couple holdouts. No, I don't want to do that, but
Mm-hmm.
everyone was just going, okay, this could work. It could be cool, and sure, let's go for it. And it turned out so good. I mean, better than I thought it would. And the live DVD, in my opinion, is better than the studio album. And having Jimmy and Ted in there, and the whole Spock's Beard family, it was great. It was a real great experience and something of value, I think,
Well, for certainly has value. I remember when I got it, I played it, and I just like, what is this salty discharge coming out of my eyes? What is
Yeah, Neal had a few moments there, where okay, I got to keep singing. How am I going to keep singing? I'm being overcome at this moment.
Yeah, very very emotional moments on the stage for him, and you're right. It just the fact that the entire band was together, everybody that was formerly or currently in the band being all together in one place was just a very special moment for Spock's Beard fans.
Yeah, and having all those people, all those voices to sing, and two drummers to play, and it was kind of one of those situations that should have happened and finally did. And it was an open end, an untied end for Spock's that was now completed, and it was a good thing to do.
Oh, good. I'm glad that you guys did. I'm sure that all your fans are as well. So, when somebody brings this Pattern Seeking Animals album home and they play it start to finish, maybe they're laying in the dark, got the thing cranked up. What do you hope that they take away from that experience at the end of the listening of that album?
Ideally, it would be to have the same kind of thing that I used to experience when I was younger, and a new record would come out, and you'd take it into your room, and the lights would be kind of low, and you just sit there and listen to it, and you hear it with full concentration all the way through, and it's kind of this is not like a dancing record, it's not something that you'd party to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a listening record, and it's kind of like art rock, I would say, just as much as prog rock. And so I hope people could hear it with an open mind, and absorb and accept all the different musical influences, and hear details. There's a lot of details, and also read the liner notes, because the lyrics are just superb. I mean, you can read the lyrics and not need the music. The lyrics are in rock, are often really weird, and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times kind of silly or just spacey, and they sound good when they're sung, but they don't really make sense if you read them. And these things, they're just great. They're completely standalone quality. So, if someone can just absorb the whole thing, that would be my hope, that people would give it that kind of a chance.
Yeah. All right. Well, the album's called Spooky Action at a Distance from Pattern Seeking Animals. Comes out October 27th on Inside Out Music. And if you're a Spock's Beard fan, you're going to want to pick up the Feel Euphoria 20th Anniversary Edition on vinyl, November 24th, also on the Inside Out Music. The first in a series. I'm very excited about that. I don't. I have a small vinyl collection. I like to collect my favorite artists, and I want the whole Spock's Beard catalog on vinyl because I'm a completist and I'm a whack job. So I'm looking forward to these things getting made, and then hopefully the Neal ones and the Ted ones getting made as well. So Dave Meros, this has been a real treat for me. Always been a big fan of Spock's Beard. Really enjoyed talking to you, learning a little bit about these records. Thank you so much. I wish you nothing but the best of luck with the success of these two releases. And I know that Pattern Seeking Animals has a Facebook page. Where's the best place to get Spock's Beard information online?
Well, we also have the Facebook page, and also a website, and I think it is psanimals1.com.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. But something like that. If you just Google search Pattern Seeking Animals, you'll find it. Those are the two richest sources of info. And there'll be merch available at Bandwagon, which is a company that sells merch for different bands. And so you can buy stuff there, t-shirts and whatever, or back catalog and new ones. And
Awesome. All right.
all
Thank.
helps the next thing.
Yeah. Great. I mean, I know when we do these interviews, you put this thing to bed a while ago. Are you currently working on something?
It hasn't gone to the point of sending tracks around, but yeah, John has already started writing. I've heard a couple things ideas that he's had. He writes all the time. I
Mm.
mean, I don't know if it's every day, but it might be every day. It's like what he does for relaxation, I think. He's always coming up with ideas. He's one of these guys that he doesn't understand what the term writer's block is. It's like people have that. I don't. Why would they have that? Just write. He's always listening to music too, so I think that's keeping his ideas input.
Mm.
Constant input of ideas, and yeah. So I know that he's writing, and his goal is to do an album a year, which is pretty steep undertaking, especially with all the production that goes into it.
Yeah.
And so he's been keeping up with that, and he writes all year. A lot of times when we record a whole album's worth of stuff, and he doesn't feel like it's sitting well together, and then he'll write a couple more, and then that'll round out the album, and then there's leftover ones that'll get transferred to the next album, or maybe a bonus track or something. And so yeah, he's just a little creative machine over there.
Wow, you've been blessed with a couple of them because I don't think Neal ever stops writing either.
No, he's one of those. I've seen, like, in when we were going to gigs together in the car or something. Like, he was in the Eric Burden band with me for a while, and I'd be driving and he'd be in the passenger. We'd be talking, and all of a sudden he wouldn't be responding, and I just like look over there, and he'd be just his eyes would be closed, and he'd be just like in the middle of a conversation, something like lightning bolt went in, and he started writing a song, maybe something that one of us said, and he just gets these inspirations, and it just starts happening in his head. And fortunately, he has good enough memory to remember all these little bits that happen too, and then he can take them home and assemble them, and follow them through.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's people that are just natural writers, and John's one, and Neal's one, and I'm lucky enough to be tagging along.
Yeah, I always feel like people that sing that have half-hour long songs, they need to have good memories.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
Neal has a uncanny memory. His Al and Richard, the two other brothers, they remember stuff. They can reach back, and it's like, oh, I was reading a book when I was in 8th grade, and I really like that one line. And it's like, what? You know?
yeah. I used to be like that back before I my hair started turning gray, but not anymore.
Yeah.
Dave Meros, Spock's Beard, Pattern Seeking Animals. Thank you so much for your time, sir. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun for me, and again, nothing but the best with these releases.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for help promoting it, and thank you.